The alarm came through at 0400 hours. Captain Jiho Park was drinking his morning coffee when Lieutenant Hana Kim burst onto the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Indomitable. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she handed him the data tablet. "Sir, we picked up a distress signal," she said. "It's been broadcasting for 4 days." Jiho set down his coffee and looked at the screen. The message was simple and desperate. A civilian research ship from a species called the Velrin was under attack. They had 847 people on board: scientists, families, children. The coordinates showed they were 3 days away at maximum speed. 4 days? Jiho asked. Why hasn't anyone responded? Hana pulled up another screen. The Galactic Coalition received it. They've been debating what to do. Jiho felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had been part of the coalition for 5 years now. He knew how they worked: meetings, committees, risk assessments. They would talk until it was too late. "Get me Coalition Command," he said. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to a Lothian named Vextar. The alien had gray skin and 4 eyes that blinked independently. He looked annoyed at being contacted. "Captain Park," Vextar said, "I assume this is about the Velrin situation." "Situation?" Jiho felt his jaw tighten. "They're dying out there." "We are aware. The Council is discussing the appropriate response. These matters take time. There are treaties to consider, jurisdictional issues, and resource allocation protocols." "How much time do they have?" Vextar's eyes blinked in sequence. "The Velrin ship's life support will fail in approximately 72 hours. The Council will have a decision by then." "That's too late." "Captain, I understand your concern, but we must follow proper procedures. The Kradix raiders are dangerous. We cannot risk coalition ships without proper authorization and planning." Jiho stood up from his chair. "I'm 3 days away. Give me permission to respond." "Absolutely not. You would be violating Treaty 7-4 by entering that sector without authorization. Stand down, Captain. That is an order." The screen went dark. Jiho stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Behind him, his crew waited. They had all heard the conversation. "Sir?" Hana said quietly. Jiho turned to his navigator. "Set a course for those coordinates. Maximum burn." "Sir, the treaty?" "I don't care about the treaty," Jiho said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "There are people dying. We're going to save them." His second-in-command, Commander Taeyang Lee, stepped forward. "Captain, if we do this, they could court-martial you. They could court-martial all of us." Jiho looked at his crew. Every single one of them was watching him. "I know," he said. "Anyone who wants to object can do so now. I'll note it in the log. No one will blame you." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Hana smiled. "Course laid in, sir." "Then let's go save some people," Jiho said. The Indomitable's engines roared to life. The ship accelerated at speeds that would have injured most alien species. Humans had evolved on a heavy-gravity world. Their bodies could take it. Within an hour, Jiho had sent out an emergency recall to every human ship in range. The message was simple: civilians under attack. Coalition won't respond. "We are. Join us." The responses came back one by one. "Captain Sora Kang of the destroyer Retribution. On our way." "Commander Minho Yang of the carrier, Dauntless. Changing course now." 6 more ships altered their paths and burned hard toward the rendezvous point. 18 hours later, 8 human warships were flying in formation. 3 destroyers, 2 carriers, 1 battlecruiser, and the Indomitable. It was a fleet that made Jiho's hands shake when he thought about what they were doing. They were violating every treaty Earth had signed with the Coalition. They were risking their careers, their ships, maybe their lives. But none of them hesitated. On the second day, Admiral Do Yun Choi's face appeared on Jiho's screen. The old man looked tired. He ran a hand through his gray hair and sighed. "Jiho," he said, The coalition is screaming at me. They say you've gone rogue. They're demanding I order you back. Are you going to? Jiho asked. Do-yun was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not a happy smile. No, he said. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to back you up. If they want to court-martial you, they'll have to court-martial me too. Sir. Don't, Do-yun said. Don't thank me. Just save those people. Show the galaxy what humans do when someone needs help. The screen went dark again. Jiho sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. His crew was silent around him. They all understood what had just happened. This wasn't just about one rescue anymore. This was Earth taking a stand. On the third day, they practiced combat drills. The human pilots flew their fighters at speeds and angles that would kill most alien pilots. The G-forces were brutal. But humans had evolved to hunt on a world with predators faster and stronger than they were. They had learned to push their bodies beyond what seemed possible. Lieutenant Nari Choi was one of the fighter pilots. She pulled a 9G turn that made her vision narrow to a tunnel. But she held the maneuver and hit her target. Her instructor had once told her that most coalition pilots couldn't handle more than 4Gs. She had laughed. 4Gs was nothing. On the bridge, Jiho watched the drills and felt a cold certainty settle over him. The Kratix raiders thought they were safe. They had been raiding in this sector for decades. The coalition never fought back hard enough to matter. They would negotiate, pay ransoms, file protests. But humans were different. Humans came from a death world where everything wanted to kill you. They had learned to fight back. They had learned to be predators. Captain, Hana said, we're 4 hours from the target zone. Sound battle stations, Jiho said. All ships, prepare for combat. This is not a drill. Across the fleet, alarms rang. Marines checked their weapons. Pilots climbed into their fighters. Doctors prepared medical bays. Everyone knew what was coming. Jiho pulled up the distress signal one more time. It had been broadcasting for 7 days now. 7 days of people dying while the coalition debated. Sir, Taeyang said quietly, what if we're too late? Jiho looked at his old friend. Then we make sure the people who did this pay for it, he said. Either way, we're going in. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the crisis zone. The sensors immediately lit up with contacts, debris, wreckage, and 15 Kratix raider ships surrounding a broken, dying vessel. Life signs? Jiho asked. Detecting approximately 287, the sensor officer reported, down from 847. 560 people were already dead. Jiho felt something break inside him, but his voice remained steady. All ships, he said. This is Captain Park. We're going to save everyone we can, and then we're going to make sure this never happens again. The human fleet moved forward into weapons range. The Kratix raiders turned to face them, not knowing they had just made the last mistake of their lives. The Kratix warlord. Thexnel was having a good day. His ships had been picking apart the Velrin research vessel for a week now. The little gray aliens cried and begged so beautifully. Their desperate calls for help had gone unanswered, just as he knew they would. The coalition was weak. They always had been. When his sensors detected the approaching human ships, he actually laughed. Humans. The newest species in the coalition. The ones who tried so hard to fit in. They would run like all the others. He opened a communication channel. Attention human vessels. You are interfering with Kratix business. Turn around now, or we will destroy you. The response came from a human with a calm, flat voice. This is Captain Jiho Park of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you refuse, we will destroy you. Thexnal laughed harder. Boarded. Destroyed. These humans thought they could threaten him. He had 60 years of raiding experience. He commanded 15 warships. He had faced Coalition forces dozens of times and always won or escaped. "You have made a fatal mistake, human," he said. Then he gave the order to fire. The first railgun round hit his ship 3 seconds later. Thexnol had never experienced anything like it. The impact threw him across his command center. Alarms screamed. His tactical display showed 2 of his ships simply gone. Not disabled, not damaged. Gone. Torn apart by solid metal rounds traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. "What?" he started to say. Then the human fighters appeared. Lieutenant Nari Choi pushed her fighter into a diving attack run that pulled 7 Gs. Her vision tunneled. Her body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But her hand was steady on the trigger. She locked onto a Kradix ship and fired. Her missiles tore through its engines and the ship began spinning out of control. "Target destroyed," she reported. Her voice was calm despite the forces trying to crush her into her seat. "Moving to next contact." Around her, 40 other human fighters were doing the same thing. They moved at speeds and angles that should have been impossible. They pulled maneuvers that would have killed any Coalition pilot. But humans had evolved in 3 times the gravity these raiders were used to. Their bodies were built for this. On the Indomitable, Weapons Officer Lieutenant Hyunwoo Shin coordinated the railgun batteries. The Coalition had stopped using kinetic weapons centuries ago. They considered them too dangerous, too unpredictable. But humans had perfected them. And against ships designed to handle energy weapons, solid metal rounds were devastating. "Fire solution locked," Hyunwoo said. "Firing." Another Kradix ship broke apart. Then another. The battle had been going for 3 minutes, and half the raider fleet was already destroyed or disabled. Thexnol finally understood what was happening. These weren't the soft Coalition species he was used to fighting. These were predators. His hand moved toward the retreat command, but it was too late. A fighter appeared in front of his bridge, and the last thing he saw was the missile launch. The battle lasted 17 minutes total. When it ended, all 15 Kradix ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had 4 wounded and 0 dead. Captain Jiho didn't celebrate. He was already coordinating the rescue operation. "Taeyang, take the Marines and board that research vessel. Get everyone out. Yuna, prepare medical bays for mass casualties. I want every doctor we have ready to work." "Yes, sir," they both said. Commander Taeyang Lee led 200 Marines across the gap between ships. The Velrin vessel was a nightmare. Whole sections were depressurized. Fires burned in the oxygen-rich areas. The structure was collapsing in places. "Spread out," Taeyang ordered. "Search every room. If they're alive, we bring them home." Corporal Minho Yang kicked open a door to find 12 Velrin huddled in a sealed room. They looked up at him with their large eyes, terrified. Minho was in full combat armor, his rifle still hot from the battle. He probably looked like a monster to them. He lowered his rifle and held out his hand. "It's okay," he said gently. "We're here to help. You're safe now." One of the Velrin, barely more than a child, took his hand. Minho lifted the small alien carefully and carried them toward the extraction point. Behind him, his squad was already finding more survivors. In another section, Sergeant Minji Bay found a medical bay with 30 injured Velrin. The ship's own doctors were dead or wounded. The survivors were dying from lack of treatment. "I need medical support here now," Minji called into her radio. Dr. Yuna Song arrived 4 minutes later with her team. She looked at the injured and immediately started giving orders. Coalition medical protocols were careful and slow. Yuna didn't have time for that. She worked fast, using techniques that would have made Coalition doctors gasp. She operated in 0 gravity. She used human drugs on alien physiology, calculating dosages on the fly. She made decisions in seconds that Coalition doctors would debate for hours. And she saved lives. One Velrin had a collapsed lung and was minutes from death. Yuna cut into their chest right there in the damaged ship, with fires burning 3 rooms away. She repaired the damage with her bare hands and sealed the wound. The Velrin would live. "Next patient," she said, not even pausing to catch her breath. It took 2 hours to evacuate everyone. The human Marines searched every corridor, every room, every storage area. They found survivors in places that shouldn't have had air. They found people who had been given up for dead. When Tai Yang finally reported back to Jiho, he had tears in his eyes. 287 alive, sir. We got them all." Jiho felt something ease in his chest. They hadn't saved everyone. 560 people were already dead when they arrived. But they saved everyone they could. On the bridge, Hana was reviewing the data they had pulled from the Kradix ships. What she found made her sick. "Captain," she said quietly, "you need to see this." Jiho looked at the screen. It showed communication logs between the Kradix raiders. They had been monitoring Coalition channels. They knew the Coalition had received the distress signal. They knew no help was coming. They had taken their time, torturing people, knowing they were safe. One log in particular made Jiho's blood freeze. It was a video. A Velrin mother was begging for her child's life while Kradix warriors laughed. One of them said something in their language. The translation appeared on the screen. "The Coalition debates while we feast." Jiho watched the video 3 times. Each time his expression grew colder. Finally, he looked up at his crew. "Copy everything," he said. "Every log, every video, every piece of evidence. We're sending it all to Earth." "Sir?" Hana asked. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here. They need to know what the Coalition's debates cost." Within an hour, the report was compiled. Combat footage showing the battle, medical logs showing the rescue, and the evidence of what the raiders had done while the Coalition talked. Jiho recorded a message to Admiral Do-hyun. He kept it simple. "They let them die while they debated. We will not let this happen again." He sent the message and waited. The response came faster than he expected. It was broadcast on every Coalition channel, so everyone could hear it. Admiral Do-hyun's voice was calm and cold. "Captain Jiho Park has been promoted to Commodore for actions above and beyond the call of duty. The Galactic Coalition is hereby informed that Earth will no longer wait for permission to save lives. Any distress call received by human forces will be answered immediately. You are welcome to try and stop us." Across the galaxy, species who had never paid attention to humanity suddenly took notice. The humans from the Death World were no longer asking permission. They were taking action. And they weren't apologizing for it. On the Indomitable, Jiho looked out at the stars and thought about the Velrin mother in the video. He hadn't been able to save her, but he had saved her child, and he would make sure no one else died while bureaucrats debated. The human fleet began the journey home, carrying their rescued passengers. Behind them, the wreckage of 15 Kradix ships drifted in the dark. The report reached Earth within 6 hours. Within 12 hours, every human on the planet had seen it. The combat footage, the rescue operations, and most importantly, the videos from the Kradix ships. People watched the Velrin mother beg for her child's life. They watched Kradix warriors laugh while Coalition forces debated protocols thousands of light years away. They watched humans arrive and fight with a fury that shocked even themselves. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. Humans had joined the Galactic Coalition 30 years ago with hope and excitement. They believed they were joining a civilization that protected the weak and stood for justice. Instead, they learned the Coalition protected itself first and asked questions later. Within 24 hours, protests filled the streets of every major Earth city. The message was simple and angry. No more debates, no more protocols, save them or we will. The Coalition Council, meanwhile, was having their own crisis. They had summoned Commodore Jiho Park to answer for his actions. They cited 17 treaty violations and threatened sanctions against Earth. They expected Earth to apologize and punish their rogue officer. They badly misunderstood humans. Ambassador Seojun Han stood before the Galactic Coalition Council for the last time. He was a calm, diplomatic man who had spent 5 years building relationships with alien species. He had always smiled, always compromised, always worked to help Earth fit in. He wasn't smiling now. "Distinguished council members," he began, "for 30 years we have tried to be good members of this coalition. We followed your rules. We softened our military. We adopted your protocols. We believed in the system." He pulled up the video of the Velrin mother on the main display. The council members looked away. They had all seen it. It made them uncomfortable. "This woman called for help 7 days before she died," Seojun said. His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "Her distress signal reached coalition forces. You received it. You debated it. You held meetings. You discussed jurisdictional issues and resource allocation." He paused and looked at each council member in turn. "And while you talked, she died. Her child watched. The Kradix raiders knew you wouldn't come. They monitored your communications. They heard you debating and they laughed." Councillor Vextar, the Lothian who had ordered Jiho to stand down, spoke up. "Ambassador, we understand your anger, but we have procedures for a reason. We cannot simply rush into every dangerous situation without proper planning. That is how we maintain order and minimize casualties." "Minimize casualties?" Seojun's voice rose for the first time. 560 people died while you maintained order. How many more will die the next time you debate? How many distress calls are you ignoring right now? "That is unfair," another counselor said. "We cannot be everywhere at once." "Then make room for those who can," Seojun replied. "Earth is formally withdrawing from coalition military treaties. Effective immediately, human ships will respond to any distress call they receive, anywhere in the galaxy, regardless of jurisdiction or permission." The council chamber erupted in protests. Multiple species began shouting at once. Vextar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. "You cannot do this," he said. "You would be in violation of dozens of treaties. We will impose sanctions. We will restrict your access to coalition space." Seojun smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You are welcome to try," he said, "but understand this. If you stand between us and people who need help, we will go through you, not around you, through you." He gathered his papers and prepared to leave. At the door, he turned back one more time. "We came to you hoping to learn from older, wiser civilizations. Instead, we learned you've grown comfortable. Comfortable enough to let innocents die rather than risk your own safety. That comfort ends today." He walked out. Behind him, the council dissolved into chaos. Within hours, Earth Fleet Command issued General Order 7. The order was simple and absolute. No distress call goes unanswered. Admiral Do-Yun Choi reorganized the entire human fleet. He created 12 battle groups and assigned each one a sector of space. Each group had autonomous authority to respond to emergencies without waiting for orders. If they heard a distress call, they went. No questions asked, no delays. The coalition tried to respond with sanctions and restrictions. They blocked human ships from using certain trade routes. They revoked access to coalition refueling stations. They filed formal protests and threatened economic consequences. Earth didn't care. Within 2 weeks, 4 species formally requested permanent human security forces in their space. The Velrin were first. They had lost their research vessel, but they had also seen humans risk everything to save the survivors. They wanted that protection. The Navir followed, a peaceful trading species who had lost 17 cargo ships to pirates in the last year. Then the Ixil, whose colony worlds were constantly raided. Then the Therax, who had been begging the coalition for help for a decade. Earth accepted all their requests. Within a month, Human battle groups were stationed throughout the galaxy. And the moment they arrived, something changed. Pirate activity in human patrol zones dropped by 60% in the first week. Raiders who had operated freely for decades suddenly found their prey defended by ships that didn't negotiate, didn't pay ransoms, and didn't give warnings. The message spread quickly through the criminal networks. Avoid the humans. They don't stop. They don't negotiate. They hunt. Captain Sora Kang was on patrol in the Outer Rim when she received a distress call from a Navir cargo ship. Pirates were boarding them. By the time her destroyer Retribution arrived, the pirates had already killed 3 crew members. The pirates tried to negotiate. They offered to leave if Sora let them go. They even offered to return their stolen goods. Sora's response was simple. Surrender now or die. You have 10 seconds. The pirates chose to fight. It was over in 3 minutes. Every pirate ship was destroyed. The ones who had boarded the cargo ship tried to take hostages. Sora sent in her Marines anyway. The hostages were saved. The pirates were not. When Coalition observers questioned her actions, Sora simply said, "They killed 3 innocent people. They threatened more. I stopped them. If that violates your protocols, change your protocols." Earth wasn't asking permission anymore. And slowly species across the galaxy began to realize something important. For all their talk of civilization and order, the Coalition had allowed a culture of fear to develop. Pirates and raiders operated freely because they knew the Coalition was slow to respond and quick to negotiate. Humans were different. Humans responded fast, and humans didn't negotiate with murderers. 3 weeks after Jiho's rescue of the Velrin ship, humans had responded to 14 more distress calls. Each time they arrived to find Coalition forces still en route or still assessing the situation. Each time, humans resolved the crisis with overwhelming force. The galaxy was beginning to understand what it meant to be from a death world. Humans had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had fought predators stronger and faster than themselves. They had learned to turn fear into fury and fury into action. They didn't debate when someone needed help. They acted. And heaven help anyone who stood in their way. In the Coalition Council chambers, the debates continued. Some species demanded Earth be expelled. Others quietly thanked human commanders for saving their people. The divide was growing. Counselor Vextar watched it all with growing concern. The Coalition had maintained peace for 3,000 years through careful diplomacy and measured responses. Now these aggressive Deathworlders were tearing that system apart. But late at night, when he thought no one was watching, even Vextar pulled up the response statistics. In 1 month, human forces had saved over 4,000 lives. The Coalition had saved 300 in the same time period. The numbers didn't lie. The Deathworlders were better at saving lives than the Peacekeepers. And that reality was going to change everything. The Kratic Swarm had been raiding the galaxy for 200 years. They were not the largest criminal organization, but they were the most feared. They took what they wanted, killed who they pleased, and disappeared before anyone could respond. The Coalition had tried to stop them dozens of times. The Coalition had always failed. Now they faced an enemy that didn't fail. Warlord Krevnoth heard about Thexnal's death with cold fury. 15 ships destroyed by a handful of humans. It was an insult that could not be tolerated. If the swarm showed weakness, every prey species in the galaxy would rise against them. "We will teach these Deathworlders fear," Krevnoth announced to his fleet commanders. "Assemble our forces. We hunt them now." He gathered 120 ships. It was the largest Kratic's fleet assembled in 50 years. They would find a human patrol group and destroy it completely. They would show the galaxy that the swarm was still the apex predator. His scouts located Task Force 7 3 days later. 8 human ships on patrol in the Crix Nebula. Perfect prey. Krevnoth smiled as he gave the order to attack. Commander Sora Kang was reviewing supply reports when the alarms sounded. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Junho Nam, looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Commander, I'm reading 120 hostile contacts. They're surrounding us." Sora stood up and looked at the tactical display. The Craddocs had positioned their fleet perfectly. They blocked every escape route. It was a flawless ambush. "Sound battle stations," Sora said calmly. "All ships, combat formation Delta. Prepare to engage." "Commander," Junho said carefully, "they outnumber us 15-1. Shouldn't we call for backup?" Sora looked at the young officer and smiled. It was a cold smile. "Backup will take 2 days to arrive. Those people in the Velrin research ship didn't have 2 days. Neither did the cargo crews we've saved. We fight with what we have, now." The Craddocs fleet moved in, confident in their numbers. They expected the humans to try to run or to call for help. They didn't expect the human ships to accelerate directly toward them at maximum speed. "They're insane," one Craddocs captain reported. "They're charging us." Krevnoth laughed. "Then we will slaughter them easily. All ships, open fire." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human ships didn't scatter or dodge. They flew straight into the Craddocs formation like spears. Their railguns fired continuously, each shot carefully calculated. Craddocs ships that had been designed to handle energy weapons couldn't withstand solid metal traveling at relativistic speeds. 5 Craddocs ships exploded in the first 30 seconds, then 10 more. The human fleet was taking hits, but they kept coming. Their armor was designed for high-speed impacts. Their shields were optimized for kinetic defense. Every system on their ships was built to survive and keep fighting. Lieutenant Nari Choi launched from the carrier with 40 other fighters. The G-forces, as she accelerated, would have killed a coalition pilot. She felt her vision narrow and her body compress, but she had trained for this her entire life. "Gold Squadron, attack pattern fury!" she called out. "Make every shot count!" Her squadron dove into the enemy formation. They flew through crossfire that should have destroyed them. They pulled turns at 9 and 10 Gs, and they killed with surgical precision. Nari locked onto a Craddocs destroyer and fired all her missiles. The enemy ship tried to evade, but she predicted the movement. All 6 missiles hit. The destroyer broke apart. "Target destroyed," she reported. Then she was already lining up her next shot. On the Retribution, Sora coordinated the fleet action while her ship shook from impacts. Warning lights flashed across her bridge. Damage reports came in, but she stayed focused. "Junho, target their command ship. Hyunwoo, give me full power to forward railguns." "Commander, if we do that, we'll lose rear shields," Hyunwoo warned. "We're not running," Sora said. "Fire!" The railgun volley tore through space and smashed into Krevnoth's flagship. The warlord felt his ship shudder. Alarm screamed. His tactical officer reported critical damage. "How?" Krevnoth whispered. "We outnumber them 15-1. His second-in-command looked at the battle display with growing horror. "They're not fighting like prey. They're fighting like predators. Like us." "No," Krevnoth said quietly. "Not like us. Better than us." The battle raged for 7 hours. The Craddocs had numbers, but humans had something else. They had been born on a world where everything tried to kill them. They had evolved to fight back against impossible odds. Giving up was not in their nature. Sergeant Minji Bay led a boarding action that would become legend. Her ship, the destroyer Vengeance, had been crippled. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were destroyed. By all logic, it should have surrendered. Instead, Minji led her Marines onto a Craddocs flagship through a boarding tube. They fought room to room through a ship full of enemies. The Craddocs were bigger and stronger than humans. But humans were faster and smarter. More importantly, humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. They knew war in ways the Craddocs couldn't imagine. Minji shot the enemy commander in his own bridge. Then she used his communication system to broadcast a message to the entire Kradix fleet. Your warlord is dead. Your flagship is ours. Surrender now, or we do this to every single ship you have. The Kradix fleet broke. Ships began trying to flee. But human fighters were faster. Human weapons were more accurate. And humans didn't give mercy to raiders who had murdered thousands. When the battle ended, 120 Kradix ships had been destroyed or captured. Task Force 7 had lost 2 ships completely. 3 more were badly damaged. But they had won. The casualties were devastating by human standards. 847 dead, 1,200 wounded. Every ship was damaged. But they had stopped the Kradix's largest fleet. Commander Sora sat in her damaged command chair, covered in blood from a cut on her forehead. Her ship was dying around her. But she was alive. And they had won. She opened a communication channel to the entire sector. Her face was bruised and bloody, but her voice was steady. This is Commander Sora Kang to all Kradix forces. You wanted war with Earth. You have it. We don't stop. We don't negotiate. We don't forgive. Tell every raider, every slaver, boss, every killer in this galaxy. Humanity is hunting you now. Run far. Run fast. We're coming anyway. The message went viral across the galaxy within hours. Coalition species watched it with shock and fear. Criminal organizations watched it with terror. The humans had fought 120 ships with only 8 and won. What would they do with a real fleet? The Kradix swarm, for the first time in 200 years, knew fear. But the galaxy was about to learn something else. Humans could be pushed, they could be tested, they could even be hurt. But if you hurt them badly enough, they didn't retreat. They didn't negotiate. They declared war. 3 days after the Battle of Crix Nebula, Earth Fleet Command issued a formal declaration. The Kradix swarm had attacked human forces. They had killed human soldiers. That aggression could not stand. Earth declared total war. Not a police action, not a peacekeeping mission. War. Admiral Do-Yun's message was broadcast across every channel in the galaxy. The Kradix swarm has chosen to make humanity their enemy. They will learn what it means to fight a species that evolved on a death world. They will learn what happens when predators meet prey. And they will learn why we survived when everything else on our world wanted us dead. The galaxy held its breath. The Deathworlders were going to war. And heaven help anyone in their path. Earth mobilized for war with a speed that terrified the galaxy. Within 3 weeks, the human fleet doubled in size. Within 2 months, it tripled. Every shipyard in the solar system was converted to military production. Civilian factories began producing weapons. Mining operations expanded to feed the war machine. The coalition watched in shock. They had never seen an entire species mobilized this way. Most species would debate for months before taking such action. Humans debated for 3 days, and then simply did it. How are they building ships this fast? Counselor Vexistar asked his military advisors. They're not following safety protocols, one advisor said nervously. They're working in 3 shifts around the clock. Some workers are putting in 20-hour days. It's not sustainable. And yet they sustain it, Vexitar said quietly. He was beginning to understand something about humans. When they decided something needed to be done, they did it. They didn't calculate acceptable losses or optimal timelines. They just worked until the job was finished. The Kradix swarm, meanwhile, was learning the same lesson. Warlord Krevnoth had survived the Battle of Crix Nebula, but barely. He had retreated to the swarm's home territories and called for every ship, every warrior, every resource they had. We must show strength, he told his commanders. If we appear weak, every species we have raided will rise against us. We must destroy the humans completely. But the Kradix were discovering that destroying humans was harder than it looked. Human battle groups were now spread across the galaxy. Kradix ships that tried to raid as they always had found themselves hunted. Ambushes failed, traps were turned against them, and every engagement ended with human victory. Lieutenant Nari Choi became the first human ace in alien combat. Then she became a double ace, then triple. By the third month of the war, she had 17 confirmed kills. Other pilots asked her how she did it. "I imagine what they did to those families on the Velrin ship," she said simply. "And then I don't miss." On the ground, human Marines were proving equally effective. Sergeant Minji Bay led raid after raid on Craddock's bases. The Craddocs were physically stronger than humans, but humans were faster, smarter, and more ruthless. They used tactics the Craddocs had never encountered. They fought in ways that seemed insane. One Craddock's commander reported, "They don't value their own lives. They will sacrifice themselves to achieve objectives. We cannot predict them because they do not think like rational beings." He was wrong. Humans were entirely rational. They simply had different priorities. They valued the mission more than personal safety. They valued their team more than themselves, and they valued justice more than survival. Admiral Do-Hyun Choi coordinated the war from Earth with a calm certainty that inspired his people. He was 70 years old and had seen more combat than most soldiers half his age. He knew the cost of war. He had lost friends, family, and countless soldiers under his command. But he also knew that some things were worth fighting for. "The Craddocs have raided and murdered for 200 years, he told a reporter. "They've killed thousands, maybe millions. The coalition never stopped them because it was too hard, too risky, too expensive. We will stop them because it's right, even if it costs everything." 6 months into the war, Earth Fleet had 300 warships. They were building 10 more every week. The coalition had finally stopped trying to sanction or restrict humanity. Instead, they were watching in awe and fear as the Deathworlders demonstrated what total war looked like. The final assault on Craddock's Prime was planned with careful precision. Commodore Jiho Park, now commanding the battleship Vengeance, would lead 300 ships in a direct assault on the Craddock's homeworld. It would be the largest human military operation in history. The night before the attack, Jiho walked through his ship and talked with his crew. They were scared. Many of them would die in the coming battle. They all knew it. But not one of them asked to be transferred. Not one suggested they should negotiate instead. A young ensign named Taeyeon approached him. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course," Jiho said. "Why are we doing this?" "The Craddocs attacked us, yes, but they're far from Earth. We could leave them alone now. Why risk so many lives?" Jiho was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up a video on his tablet. It was the Velrin mother begging for her child's life. The same video that had started everything. "I saw this 6 months ago," Jiho said softly. "I couldn't save her, but I saved her child. Do you know where that child is now?" Taeyeon shook her head. "Living with a Velrin family on their homeworld, going to school, learning, growing, living, because we refused to let bureaucrats debate while innocents died." Jiho looked at the young ensign. "We're fighting this war so that no other child has to watch their parent die while the galaxy does nothing. We're fighting so that when someone calls for help, they know someone will come. That's worth dying for." Taeyeon saluted. "Yes, sir, it is." The assault on Craddock's Prime began at dawn. 300 human warships dropped out of FTL in perfect formation. The Craddock's defense fleet, 150 ships strong, moved to intercept. What followed was the most brutal space battle in modern history. The Craddocs fought desperately, defending their homeworld with everything they had. But humans had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. They had studied every Craddock's tactic. They had analyzed every weakness. And they had brought overwhelming force. Captain Taeyang Lee coordinated the orbital bombardment that crippled the Craddock's defense platforms. His targeting was so precise that military installations were destroyed while civilian areas remained untouched. The Craddox had shown no such mercy. Humans did. The battle raged for 36 hours. Ships burned. Marines stormed the surface. Fighters danced through the debris. And slowly, inevitably, the Craddox defenses crumbled. Warlord Krevnoth made his final stand in the throne room of his fortress. Sergeant Minji Bay and her Marines breached the doors and found him surrounded by his elite guards. "You cannot win," Krevnoth said. "Kill me, and others will rise. The swarm is eternal." Minji lowered her rifle and looked at the old warlord. "The swarm is over," she said quietly. "Surrender now and you'll get a fair trial. Refuse, and you die here." Krevnoth laughed. "A trial? You think I fear your justice?" "You should," Minji said. "We're going to show the galaxy every crime you've committed, every raid, every murder, every atrocity. And then we're going to let justice be done." Krevnoth's laughter died. He looked at the young human and saw something in her eyes that terrified him. She meant it. They were going to expose everything. They were going to hold him accountable. He reached for his weapon. Minji shot him. It was over in seconds. The Craddox swarm surrendered unconditionally 30 hours after the assault began. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. Human forces arrested every Craddox war criminal they could find. The trials lasted for months. Evidence was presented. Victims testified. The galaxy watched as humans demanded justice not just for themselves, but for everyone the Craddox had hurt. 74 Craddox leaders were executed after fair trials. Thousands more were imprisoned. The remaining Craddox population was placed under joint human coalition supervision. They would be given a chance to rebuild their society, but they would never raid again. The cost had been high. Earth lost 47 ships in the final battle. 7,000 humans died. 20,000 more were wounded. But they had stopped the Craddox forever. 5 months after the war ended, the Galactic Coalition held a special session. They voted on new security protocols. The vote was overwhelming. The new rules were simple. Distress calls triggered immediate response. Force was authorized for rescue operations. Bureaucratic delay in emergency response was criminal negligence. They called them the Earth Protocols. 17 species formally requested permanent human security forces. The Coalition, seeing which way the wind was blowing, officially recognized the Terran Defense Alliance. Within a year, 40% of Coalition space was under human protection. Admiral Jiho Park stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, looking out at Earth. His old friend, now Captain Taeyang Lee, joined him. "Was it worth it?" Taeyang asked quietly. "The war, the casualties, everything we lost." Jiho thought about that question for a long time. He thought about the Velrin mother he couldn't save. He thought about the 287 people he did save. He thought about the thousands of lives saved by human forces since then. He pulled up a report on his tablet. In the year since humans had started responding to distress calls, they had saved 127,000 lives. Pirates and raiders across the galaxy had learned to fear the Deathworlders. Slave trafficking was down 70% in human patrol zones. And most importantly, when people called for help now, someone came. "Every single soul we pulled from the darkness," Jiho said softly. "Every distress call we answered. Yes, it was worth it." The galaxy had changed forever. The soft, comfortable coalition that had let innocents die was forced to adapt. Species that had forgotten how to fight were learning again. And at the center of it all were humans. The Deathworlders who refused to let evil prosper while good people debated. Across the stars, pirates and raiders told stories about the humans. They warned each other to avoid the ships with Earth markings. They spoke in hushed tones about the species that didn't negotiate, didn't retreat, and never forgot. And on 1,000 worlds, parents told their children, If you're ever in trouble, if you ever need help, call for the humans. They will come. They always come. The Deathworlders had become the Guardians, and the galaxy was safer for it.